Hello everyone, and welcome to 30 Minutes Thursday Tea Time at 3:30. Today you'll hear how Nespresso are adapting, plus two new additions to our portfolio, Konnecto, who help you understand customer journeys end to end, and Wagawin, who deliver first-party data for brands by making ads more engaging. A quick shout out to our sponsors, Investec, Lewis Silkin and Hayes McIntyre, who are standing by to give you free advice on wealth management, legal and financial. Before we get to the meat of today, a quick mention of a pair of new events we're running next week on Tuesday and Thursday at 3:30, called Grey Hair Works Goes Motoring, aimed at anyone with any links to the automotive industry, from manufacturers to dealers to service industries. As ever, there'll be 30 minutes each, with case studies from BMW, Nissan and insurers, and some fab keynotes from the boss of What Car and the former CMO of Bentley. For an invitation, just send us a begging email to toad@greyhairworks.com and we'll reserve you an armchair near the front. But first, in a week when the lights were dimmed at Debenhams as the group went offline with a loss of about 12,000 jobs, Boohoo are buying them for their online assets only, and with Arcadia looking likely to go the same way after the administrators entered into exclusive talks with ASOS, the need to engage digitally with customers has never been more important. In fact, the Office of National Statistics data shows that in November 2020, year-on-year growth for online sales in the UK was 75%. And more companies are embracing a D2C approach. We heard from PepsiCo on a recent tea time about their initiatives, and we're seeing the growing importance to brands like Nike, where 1/3 of their sales are now D2C. And that's where we come in. No nonsense, old, wise, and not too infirm. We've curated a raft of fabulous solutions from around the world, solving many of your challenges whilst maximising your opportunities in this increasingly digital world. All backed up by a bunch of experienced C-level associates with deep sector expertise. From major projects in partnership with our pals from Digital Works Group to support from individuals with the scars to show who can hold your hands along the way. One company which has had to adapt to new ways of working is Nespresso. And we're delighted to be joined by Peter York, former General Manager Feminine Care at Procter & Gamble, who's recently joined Nespresso as Head of New Systems, Innovation and Marketing. Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Alex. Good to meet you. Good to speak to everybody.
So, Peter, I guess, you know, the killer question is, how have sales of Nespresso held up during the lockdown?
Well, thanks, Alex. I mean, firstly, you know, it's a bit of a sobering intro you gave about the high street. So I guess the first thing is to hope everybody on the call is okay, and you know, wish them good health, and I hope that continues as well, because I think that's probably the most important thing at the moment. I mean, when we refer to the coffee business, you know, it's being impacted in a very different way in different places. The crucial questions are how and where. I mean, if I were to tell you the coffee category globally would be in the top 25 countries of the world GDP. It's a huge category, right? And what we're seeing, as you would expect, is a significant shift from workplace and out of home consumption into home consumption. And if I tell you the home consumption market is in excess of 100 billion, and it's started growing double digits since last April, you can see that for a brand like Nespresso, that obviously is good news. So, you know, it's obviously a segment that's growing now domestically, and there's a tailwind. And as we'll talk, I think one of the questions we have to answer is how we deal with that tailwind and get ready for what comes afterwards.
No, completely understand that. I've just had 2 messages from people saying they're drinking Nespresso as they're watching this. So obviously they're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Oh, there's 3.
I mentioned D2C earlier, and
yes,
you guys were an early adopter of D2C. Can you take us through some of the touch points and approaches you used with your omni-channel approach?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's really been a really interesting onboarding for me, because you know, when you stand back and look at Nespresso from the outside, you know, it obviously is this huge success story in terms of a direct-to-consumer business. What is very interesting when you learn from those who've been on the business for a long time is that actually even that model was born out of necessity. So actually, the reason Nespresso is primarily direct to consumer is the retailers didn't want to stock it. Okay, so the late 90s, the model wasn't working, and actually it was a decision made, by some fairly brave folks in Vevey, to go direct. And so proving yet again that innovation sometimes is born out of necessity and of bad times. So we've had this model for a long time, and actually for us, DTC means many different things. I mean, if I were to tell you, even before COVID, still about a quarter of the business in some countries is done by telephone. Okay, oh, wow. So I know a lot of people think of direct to consumer now as click, but a lot of people still like to order their coffee by speaking to somebody and ringing it up, right? So there's, for us, it's a very varied model. So we have many touch points. As probably many of you know, the club is obviously at the heart of it, but obviously we have other distinctive elements. We have, as I said, the phone line, there's e-commerce, obviously our advertising, social media, significant amount, part of that sort of ecosystem that we have on Nespresso. And it's been, to your point, disrupted in many ways, right? I mean, the first way is most obviously consumer habits. So most people, sadly, are having to spend more time at home. Good news is they're consuming a bit more coffee. The side effect of that is there's more experimentation going on. So people are trying different methods. They want to try different coffees. If you're going to have to drink a lot of coffee, let's see. And finally, you've got control of it versus the vending machine at work. People are trying different things. So there's a lot more interest in the category, which is great. There's obviously, huge disruption to the retail environment. So there hasn't been a time since last April where all the Nespresso stores in the world have been open again at the same time. And that obviously creates, significant challenges, both in the short term and the long term. And I guess what it's really asking us to think about is how do people interact and experience the brand? One example, talking about how much we have telesales, but, we had to basically repurpose thousands of in-store consultants, people who worked in the boutiques to be able to deal with online and telesales, right? Because there's no point in furloughing people when you can have them take orders online and via telephone. So, examples of where we've really had to sort of adapt the model and do things in a very different way. And obviously it's also causing us to think about the model we use. And one example, subscription, which I know is increasingly common in many categories at the moment, but there's a lot of analogy in some ways with the mobile phone business, right? The coffee machine business, you buy a machine up front, and then you buy the capsules and the coffee afterwards. And so that's led us to think very differently there. So in a number of markets now, we're trying out models where you can buy the machine for €1 or €2, as long as you commit to buying a certain amount of coffee over the first 12 months. So that's causing a little bit of business model innovation as we kind of look at it. And with that, obviously, comes a lot of interesting challenges, but also, a huge amount of opportunity. So really, to answer your question very directly, a lot of disruption from COVID to the DTC model, most of it positive, and most of it very encouraging.
And I mean, you've explained sort of structural innovation, but has the pandemic impacted on the sort of broader product innovation or bigger picture structural change over a longer period of time?
Yeah, it has. I think, I mean, this is a favorite topic of mine at the moment because, COVID's been brutal, right, in terms of winners and losers, and and it's industries that are winning or losing, right? Not necessarily companies at the moment. All boats float on a rising tide, right? And I think one of the things that stresses me a little bit is how those that are doing well may not realize that things are going to get tougher again. Yeah. And the role that innovation needs to play in that. So, for example, you still hear people talking about, it's great we had digital assets and we had the omni-channel approach. Fine, but that's now part of life, right? So what comes next? What's the thing we're going to do? We're going to do next, and make the most of what's coming. And I see a lot of that behavior at the moment, that kind of relaxed, don't worry, we're doing okay, everything is going to be all right kind of approach, and that kind of worries me, because I think consumer habits and expectations have changed, as I said, and I think therefore we need to think about how we're going to deliver that. Not just with the normal levels of innovation and new coffees and new flavors that we have, but on top, consumer shopping habits have changed in a big way, right? And I guess one of the concerns we have, and one of the challenges we've got to think about from an innovation point of view, is a big part of the Nespresso experience was the boutique experience, right? So probably 30 to 40% of our members would visit a boutique in a year. And they love it, right? Because they get to go in, everyone knows their name, they get to try the coffees, all the rest of it. And none of that is available at the moment. So while the omni-channel approach has again been useful, because people can click online and or ring up and get their product, we're obviously breaking a little bit of the experience that people have with the brand. And I ask myself, what comes after that, right? What's going to happen? Because if you've trained people to go online and click, it's not a big step for them to go online somewhere else and click, right? So, how do we recreate these experiences, and are going to be extremely important parts, I think, of our, of our innovation. And then obviously the last part is huge changes in media consumption, and, how people are interacting with the brand and connecting with the brand. Bizarrely, TV has probably got slightly more important again, because people are at home more, so that it's switched on more. But also, how we interacting with people, how we connecting with them. So, I think it's forcing us rightly to look at virtually every element of our ecosystem from a consumer contact point of view, and we're going to have to innovate. And so, to be honest, I'm not worried about 2021. I'm worried about 2022.
Yeah, understood. And do you find, the need to constantly adapt and innovate, do you find there is a need to change the way the company as a whole works, and sort of to create a more joined up approach?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that. It's obviously not within my scope to change some of those things. But I'm sure many people on the call would share the belief that the sort of old linear approach that I grew up with, joining P&G 25 years ago has kind of disappeared, right? So the whole idea of, someone invents a product, you figure out what the inside is, how do you sell it, you make a commercial, you stick it on air, you put the product in the store, and you hope people buy it. I think we all recognize that linear approach is dying, right? With the interaction people now have with brands and products. So with it, I think comes a lot of pressure on the organization to make sure it is also linked together and linked with each other. And, frankly, that's a challenge, because, big companies, and we're obviously now a big company, have grown up with individual silos and fiefdoms, and everybody has their territory. So trying to sort of override that now and circuit break it is quite challenging, but I think it needs to be done.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think now would be a very good time to actually bring in Danielle from
Absolutely.
Konnecto. The reason for that is Danielle's Chief Revenue Officer at Konnecto, and Konnecto are all about understanding consumer journeys. So Danielle, could I bring you in, please?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you today, and I'm really excited to share with you how it is that Konnecto gives you visibility into those early stages of the customer journey. So we're a startup that's based out of Tel Aviv, and we entered the market 4 years ago out of the understanding that brands have a lot of visibility into what's happening on their asset and what's happening one step before consumers make it to their asset. But when we're looking at that entire path to purchase, so from the trigger of what causes someone to go into that funnel, through those early stages of research and of consider, these are areas that brands don't actually have a lot of visibility into today. Now, this lack of visibility can essentially be translated into either a variety of missed opportunities, or by having this visibility, you would essentially have an unfair advantage depending how you want to look at it. And it can be divided into two pillars. So the first one is more on the strategic layer of aspects around go-to-market strategy, really understanding what is the market that I'm entering, what are consumers seeking in this market, and how do I, from the get-go, already start aggressively taking market share of consumers. M&A and innovation opportunities. What are other companies doing out there that could potentially be interesting for my brand? And aspects around new product development. On the other side, we're also talking about the marketing and tactics of things. So how do we actually increase conversions on our website or on marketplaces and cause consumers to purchase more? How do we increase website visitors by meeting these consumers at the very early stages of the funnel through one of the biggest pain points, which is reduction in cart abandonment? So really, how do we get more consumers to stay on our website and not drop off to one of the competitors? The way that we do this is through a two-phased approach. The first phase is through the Konnecto data community, in which we essentially incentivize consumers to share their data across digital platforms, ranging from a browser extension, API connection through social media, and other sources. All of this data is completely anonymized so that we're GDPR compliant. And from there, we apply our algorithms to surface different patterns of behavior that have the ability to increase the funnel from the very beginning. These opportunities are then extrapolated with external data sources in order to size this opportunity for larger audiences. All of this is brought together through the Konnecto Reveal and Disrupt dashboard, which what essentially you can have here is visibility, first of all, into what the digital customer journey looks like, both broken down by the different phases and what are the trigger points in each phase, through what are the funnels and the most prominent funnels for each one of your competitors. This is then translated into understanding what are the threats and opportunities that you should be aware of in the market. And lastly, drived into actionable recommendations which you can execute on, both in the space of strategy, so new product development, et cetera, as well as in the digital marketing space. So opportunities such as SEA, SEO, display ad, new sales channels, et cetera. So that summarizes very quickly the Konnecto capability, and I'm happy to answer any questions that come up.
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, congratulations, and always great to see innovative ideas. So well done. I have a few questions for me. I mean, firstly, the cynic in me, right, thinks you probably have to spend quite a lot of money on advertising to get the benefit. So can you give me an idea of what type of and volume of advertising the brands need to do to get value from you?
Yeah, so when we're looking, as I said, we have the strategic pillar and then we have the marketing pillar. So when we're looking at the marketing pillar, we're traditionally looking at brands that have a minimum of $1 million a year spending. We work mainly with Fortune 500 brands, but we also work with other companies that their main goal is to ramp up their digital presence and to really be key players in the space. So anything above that budget is suitable from our perspective and experience.
Very clear. And I think you said your database is about 200,000 folks. How do you ensure it's representative?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a few different methods. The first one is the fact that we extrapolate what we see from within the data community with big data sources in order to size the opportunity for larger audiences. The second fold of things is we have a very cohesive team of data scientists, and their goal is really to develop methodologies per industry and per geography in order to understand what representation means, to be able to adapt the numbers and always be with our finger on the pulse to represent. And lastly, which is, kind of obvious to say, but at the end, we're measured by results. So if we can drive results, nobody's going to care if it was based on 1,500 people or 10,000 people. And if we don't drive results, it doesn't matter even if there were 150 people in the panel, 150,000, sorry.
Very clear. Oh, thank you. And one question, is it easy to integrate or set up? I mean, most, big businesses are already pretty complex. So how does that work?
Yeah, so the way we do the integration is through two phases. We typically start off within an organization working across 1 to 2 teams with 1 to 2 geographies. And in that phase, there's no integration needed. So essentially, we do the data collection and there's no sharing of information. After that phase, once we start rolling out within the organization globally and across teams, we do have the option to integrate into the DMPs and also into the marketing automation tool so that we can really close that loop from recommendation to execution and see and that measurement as well.
Thank you. And one more question, if I may. I mean, what does the rollout process typically look like with clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the setup time is about 3 weeks until teams start getting the dashboard, getting weekly recommendations. It's about 3 recommendations a week. And as I mentioned, we start off typically with 1 to 2 teams in 1 to 2 geographies. We work there for a 6-month paid POC. And then from there, we roll out based on the success there into other geographies, other teams within the organization. And we really have many organizations where we're spread wide across the organization.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thanks very much. At this stage, I'd like to bring in Nico, who is the founder of Wagawin, because they've got some really cool tools to allow big brands like Nespresso, etc., actually generate first-party data. So Nico, do you want to take over, please?
Sure. Thanks, Alex, for having me. Great to be here. And it's been quite a lot of content so far. So I think it's time to take a breath. Let's imagine everyone for a short moment that you go to a bar, right? It's been a while for all of us, but give it a try. We have all been to bars like this, not really relaxing, to be honest. It takes up to 60 minutes until the barkeeper recognizes you, and you may even end up with the wrong drink. But there are also this kind of bars where the bartender knows you, and without even asking, you will hold your favorite drink in your hand. And you will feel appreciated, as we all love to be treated as an individual. Obviously, we are not a bar. This was just a scenario. Instead of running a bar, we make mobile device users feel appreciated. Let me introduce the technology we invented. It's called Living Ads. And Living Ads bring interaction elements known from social media to the open web. This is a normal mobile website, what you see here. But however, the ad you see isn't static. It's presented with a Tinder mechanic. Users in this case choose their favorite coffee taste by swiping the corresponding card to the right. And it goes without saying that everything is tracked and shared with the coffee producer in real time. This is just one of plenty examples. We have many more living ads, but they all have one thing in common: leveraging on learned mobile behavior. The question is, why do brands use living ads? Using living ads is as easy as pie. Our technology basically turns any existing video or display ad into a living ad within a few minutes. Second, the reach is endless as we have access to all mobile websites and apps globally. Hence, there is no scalability issue, no matter which country in the world. Living ads generate up to 5 times more user data than standard solution. Why? Because standard solutions here on the left only generate data in case a user clicks. Just ask yourself, when did you click on a mobile ad for the last time? Living ads do not only generate outstanding results for upper and mid-funnel campaigns, but they also unlock data that will boost the lower funnel activities. The extracted data is used to approach users based on their interests, no matter where they are. Big Mac to the right while reading the news in the morning, Big Mac will appear in your Insta feed with a 20% discount during the lunch break. Deutsche Telekom, one of our biggest clients here in Germany, uses living ads 365 days per year. During one campaign last year, just to give you one insight, they promoted the launch of a new series on their own streaming service called Magenta TV, while also identifying thousands of Germans interested in politics. Just a few weeks later, another series started on their streaming service with the main act Gerhard Schröder. For those who are not from Germany, that's our former chancellor. The segment of people interested in politics outperformed all other targeting segments by far, showing just how impactful our technology is. That's it for the moment. Thanks for your attention and really happy to answer your questions.
Thanks, Nico. Thanks, Nico. I mean, great. A useful reminder about quality, which is a subject close to my heart. So one question, how do you tackle the famous GDPR topic? I mean, do users give their consent before the data can be processed?
Good question. So this is obviously, I would say, a spicy topic. So yes, we always make sure that we have a contractual relationship with our brands using our technology, making sure that they are really the controllers of the brand and we are the processor. For those who are familiar with GDPR, it's always about controller and processor. So we don't even see the data. We send it right to the brand. And we also only send data back to the brand in case a user gave consent. So we are reading out the consent stream of the user. If the user has not opted in, we will not process the data and will not share it with the brand.
Okay, thanks, Nico. And again, the old cynic in me says, there's quite a lot of interactive ad formats offered by folks out there. So what sets you apart?
Totally right. So this is obviously like a question we get quite often. So they are the ones you're pointing to. They are most of the time those kind of rich media providers, right? So what they do is basically they really come up with a new format from scratch, really tailor-made for a certain solution, focusing more on creativity. What we do is we are not a creative agency, we are a tech company. We want to engage people with advertising content using existing interaction elements known from social media. So we will focus on data, on scalability, and we make sure that you can really deploy globally on any kind of mobile website and app.
Great, great. And the living ads are displayed exactly where? I mean, why do publishers agree to work with you?
It's important to understand that we only display living ads where you can also extract data, right? So we are not running them on closed ecosystems, the so-called walled gardens. We are running it on all mobile websites and apps globally, not belonging to those platforms. So any kind of mobile news website or sports app or fashion app, I mean, we have a reach of like basically a global reach, but we need the website or app to not belong to the closed ecosystems in order to extract the data.
Okay, great. And I think you partly answered this in the second question, but who creates these living ads? I mean, do you take care at all of asset creation or help at all?
No, so here we work with the creative agencies or the in-house creative agencies of the brands. So they basically already have the videos and banners because they're running the campaign anyway, and we just upload them to our system, turn them into a living ads, and ready to go to run the campaign.
Okay. Thanks, Nico. Great.
Sure.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you so much to our presenters today. We heard a lot from Peter about how Nespresso are coping and the need to adapt and how they're embracing digital. We then heard from Konnecto about how their solution allows you to better understand end-to-end consumer journeys and adapt accordingly. And then finally from Nico at Wagawin about how effortless personalization makes digital ads more engaging and therefore drives data for the advertiser. If you've missed any of our previous sessions and would like to access a recording, please just let us know. Otherwise, make a note in your diaries for Thursday, the 25th of February, when we'll be joined by the Chief Digital Officer at the National Institute for Health Research, John Nuther. But interestingly, he was formerly a Senior Director of Digital Products at Asda. As ever, we'll be joined by 2 other solutions partners. If you need to get in touch with us, just email bingo@greyhairworks.com. Thank you to our sponsors, Investec, Lewis Silkin and Hayes McIntyre. And it goes without saying, thank you, the lovely attendees. I think we hit a record today in a number of people turning up. So thank you very much. Look forward to catching you next month. All the best, everyone. Thanks. Bye.